You ever make a mistake in your life and then realize almost immediately that it was a big mistake? Yeah, that was my mistake. You see, I've always fancied myself as a pickup guy. I've owned a couple of Ram pickups. I had some Chevy pickups before that. I even had a Nissan pickup in there for good measure. But for some crazy reason, a couple months ago, I thought to myself, maybe I should get a family-friendly SUV. That was a mistake. I guess you could say I fixed the glitch. Thanks to an absolutely insane used car market right now, I was actually able to trade in the Tahoe and get about $5,000 more than what I paid for it on my trade-in, which is ridiculous. So in doing so, I got the 2021 Ram 1500 Bighorn Edition. The only problem is, if you know anything about Ram pickups, you know that in the rear end of those trucks, they build them with actual dog. I mean, real legitimate dog. Okay, maybe it's not real, but the coil springs that they have in the rear end of the stock Ram pickups are really bad when it comes to towing something heavy. And I think I own something heavy. Oh yeah, that. If you watched the video I made last year where I talked about how I used to tow that with my previous Ram pickup, you know I had the luxury of air shocks and the full air suspension in my Ram Rebel, which was great. But because I was trying to keep my cost down on the trade-in and buying this brand new pickup, I did not opt for the air suspension, but there is a fix. This is the Airlift 1000 HD adjustable air springs. The way these bad boys work is I'm going to install one of these air springs inside each of the coil springs in the rear. These are manual air bags, and what I'm going to do is install a little spot right about there where I will be able to manually inflate these airbags. I had this same setup on my old Ram pickup, and it actually works incredibly well for much cheaper than opting for the full air ride suspension. If you know anything about towing, you know that keeping your tow vehicle level is crucial when it comes to maintaining safety and control of the vehicle. If it squats in the rear, then the weight comes off of the front tires, and you kind of need those to steer your vehicle. So keeping a level ride is a safe and crucial way to tow a trailer. So on today's episode, we're going to install those air shocks. So pop a squat, or don't, and don't burn the house down. Make note of the ride height right now. There's nothing on the rear end that's going to push the truck down aside from the weight distribution hitch just sitting on there, but there's no weight from the camper on there just yet. But notice the elevated stance of the truck, and then let's check the gap here at the rear wheel. So between the tire and the fender, we're looking at about just a hair over 8 inches, okay? So we're gonna call that 8 inches. Now I'm gonna drop the travel trailer down and put the full weight on the truck. I'm also gonna put my second GoPro underneath so you can watch how these springs compress with weight on them. Oh, we finally got the tongue jack off the ground. This thing is now the weight is fully on the back end of the truck. And you can tell there is significant squat in the rear compared to what it was. So it was a shade over 8 inches. We're now at 6 inches, so we've lost 2 inches in the rear end. The front end is at 6.5 inches, which means we have more gap in the rear. More gap in the front than we do in the rear, which means that this truck is literally tilting backwards. So if I'm going down the road trying to steer, there is so much weight on the rear end of that truck, and there's not enough grip in those front tires. That's a dangerous situation. So that was the illustration purposes. It dropped it down to 6 inches. We lost 2 inches. So I'm going to get this thing unhooked, get it back in the garage, and we're going to start installing those airbags. Airlift makes kits for pretty much every make and model of truck vehicle you could think of. This is the 60828HD. This is for the Ram 1500 model year 2019 on up. So in the box you get 2 of your big airbags here. You get your hardware, which includes your T's, some wire ties, some nuts and bolts, and then of course all the air hose hookups. These little, I don't know what you call them, grommets, they sit on top of the air springs so that your connection here doesn't get crushed when your truck comes down on it. So 2 of those. And then obviously air hose. Oh, and then don't forget your decal, which I will absolutely slap onto my brand new truck. Yeah, probably not. When I installed these airbags on my 2014 Bighorn, I didn't take the wheels off, and I really should have. The directions actually recommend that you take the wheels off and take the springs fully out. We're not going to do that. That's way too big of a pain. But I am going to take the wheels off. So if you've ever changed a tire, same rules apply. You got to bust your lug nuts free first, and then jack the vehicle up. So I used a very large floor jack, and I jacked up the hitch to get this off the ground, because you need your suspension to be elevated for this. So you don't want to jack it up underneath your rear differential or anything like that. So this is jacked up. I have the front tires chalked off, and I have jack stands underneath the frame over here, which I will lower this down onto as soon as I get the tire off. So we got the tire off the truck, the wheel off the truck. Now we've got to get this in through the coil spring. Obviously it's not going to fit like this. So the way we do that, we're going to compress it down. We're going to fold it up as best we can. Roll it up like a burrito. Ugh. If I can roll it up like a burrito. Or maybe I'll roll it up like this first, huh? Obviously, I'm a professional here, if you couldn't tell. There. Something like that. A twisty tie underneath it here. If you have a second pair of hands, now would be the time to go grab them. I don't, so I'll use my teeth. Okay, there's one. There's 2. There. She's nice and wrapped up. This should fit really nicely into that coil spring that is now stretched clear open. Before we get this inside the coil spring, I do want to attach the little air attachment here, because this only goes on hand tight. It says do not use any tools to tighten this, otherwise you'll break it. But you definitely want to make sure that it is as snug as possible with your fingers. So I snug that up. I'll slide the clamp back up there. And now we'll get to adding this inside the actual spring. Next I'm going to put the air hose down through the top of the shock. And I'm not really a fan of crawling underneath the truck when it's jacked up like this. So I'm using my phone with the front-facing camera to look right here, see where I'm reaching. Then I'll just slide this up here and use my hands to grab it. So first of all, I know I said shock, and that's a coil spring. Don't kill me. But I tried to go from the outside in with the air hose, and it just didn't work. So what I ended up doing was going from inside the coil spring and then weaving the air hose out through the top. There is a pretty good gap at the very top of that air spring, and I just pushed the hose up, and then it fished itself out, and then I was able to pull it down on the other side. So that's what you're seeing here, even though I'm not talking about it. All right, so all that was just so I could get this hose to come down the other side, and it worked. So the hose is officially routed up through the spring and down the outside. Now, I take the little hose clamp that came with it and get it on here. Okay. So I had a little bit of a mix-up, but anyways, what I forgot to film here was putting the tip into the airline first. So do that first. Then take your little black, I don't know what you call this, a biscuit. Slide that over at second. Then we're going to want to hook our air shock up. And that's as easy as just screwing this back onto here. And remember, hand tight, but make sure it's tight enough. It's not going to go anywhere. No tools though, or you'll break it. Slide this back down. All right. So now we're going to put this little biscuit, I don't think I need this light right now. Little biscuit goes in here first. We're going to take the air line from the opposite end here and just kind of pull it so it goes tightened up a little bit. And then we're going to squeeze this air shock. Start putting it in here. Weaving your way up the whole way. There. The air shock is in. I'm gonna make sure that little biscuit thing's up top there. It's straight, it's in. Okay. Now, we need to cut the straps on here to release this air shock. I just blew this up with my mouth to make sure it's going to seed properly. This looks good. Heck yeah. All right. So the air shock is in. I've got the air line out here, which I'll route here in just a little bit, but I pressurize it. It's holding a little bit of air. I can feel that little biscuit on the top. Looks good, feels good. So that's it for this. That's what it looks like on the top. There we go. That's what it looks like on the top. You can see that, again, that little biscuit thing sitting up on top there. That'll keep your stem from breaking. All right, so now it's time to put the wheel back on, and then we're gonna do the exact same process on the other side. I'm not gonna film that because it's just like this side, only on the other side, but I will start the recording again once I start routing the air hoses. It's up to you. If you have a way that you can leave both of the back wheels off and actually finish this installation so that you can pressure test it and make sure there's no leaks, I can reach the inside of this spring from underneath the truck if I need to. So any adjustments that I need to make, I can make in there. But I'm not comfortable crawling under the truck when there's no wheels on it. If it's supported by jack stands, I'm just not a huge fan of that. So I'm gonna get the wheels back on it before I do the pressure testing. So I'll do the other side and then I'll come back to you. Okay, so we're gonna show you, got the passenger side done. We've got the air hose hanging down. Put the tire back on and then we'll work to routing those air hoses. We're on the home stretch. All right, we are going under the truck to route these air hoses. All right, so the goal is you don't want the air hose touching the exhaust. That is a bad thing. Air hose touches exhaust, it catches on fire, it melts. It's basically how it ends for your air shocks. So, I want to route this up, I think. If you can see it, it comes out of the top of the shock up there. I'm hoping you can see this. It comes out of the top of the shock up here. I think I might be able to get it through the frame, actually. And just go straight towards the end of the vehicle. While avoiding all the exhaust. Oh, I can't tell if there's a hole. Yes, there is. Perfect. There's a hole in the frame right there. Okay. That's step number one. Awesome. Okay. It's through the frame. There's away from the exhaust. So now, if I can find a pass through for the frame up here, which I don't think I will. So what I think I'm going to do is let's think here. I think I'm just going to pass it right over the top here of this support right here. All right. So just to kind of recap, it came out of the top of the shock. I just kind of routed it up through the frame rail, above the frame up here, and then it comes out on over top of the frame here. I brought it down to the hitch, and I zip tied it to the hitch, and I'm going to run this right side tube all the way over here to the left side tube because I have enough. And this is where I'm going to install the T. And then I'm going to run the actual inlet up here to the driver's or the license plate area. So right side is done. I've got a little bit of tube left here, so now we're going to move over to the other side. Okay, so the driver's side was very similar routing. I came out of the top of the shock. I routed it up through a hole in the frame, up underneath the bed, above these frame rails here, and then down to the hitch bar where I'm zip tying it. And we're meeting up the other half right here, and this is where we're going to install our T. Oh, that's what we're doing next. So I sped this up so you didn't have to see every single thing that happened, but what I did is just installed the T, and then I took a little bit of the excess air hose that I cut off from one of the sides, and I'm now installing that to the third area of the T, which will run up to the inlet next to the license plate. And that's what you're seeing here. Now we need to install the air outlet, or the inlet right here. So I'm feeling back here. Definitely feel some hollow space behind the plastic here. So I am confident going about right here, I think. Yeah, right there. So I'm gonna do a pilot hole. See where I went through. Perfect. A bigger hole. Unfortunately, the GoPro got washed out from the sunlight in this shot, but all I'm doing after drilling a hole next to the license plate is I am attaching the valve and valve stem to that final piece that came off of the T, and then I am weaving that through the hole that we drilled next to the license plate. The valve stem is threaded, and so you have to weave, or you have to screw on one of the nuts and then a washer, a lock washer, and then push that through that hole, and then from the other side you attach the rest of your stuff to it. That's what you're supposed to be seeing here, but it's kind of dark. Rubber washer. Flat washer. Hex nut. Okay. Here she is. Rubber washer. Flat washer. Hex nut. Got a pretty good storm coming in, so it's getting dark. But we're gonna go ahead and pump these babies up. Maximum PSI is 50, and these will definitely pop their connections if you go too full, and it doesn't take much to fill them. So when you do fill them, go quick and then check them right away, because it honestly doesn't take much to fill these things up. That is 40 right there. I'm going to give it a listen and see if I hear any air escaping. I don't. What you'd ultimately want to do when you're setting this up, if you have the ability to, is get some form of, just get a spray bottle of soapy water in it and check all your connections and see if they're leaking. It's hard to pressurize the system to do that, though, in my opinion. So I'm kind of rolling the dice and hoping that I don't have any leaks. So we'll figure out how to tell if they're leaking. But right now, we're going to go put this back on the camper and see how much she squats at 40 PSI in the airbags. Time to do this quick before the weather sets in. We now have almost 9 inches of lift with the airbags inflated. Let's drop the travel trailer down and see what they go down to. Okay, so our standard ride height was 8. It bumped it up to 9, obviously with the airbags inflated. We are now at 7.5. We lost just half an inch off of our standard 8, maybe even a little less than half an inch. But we didn't lose 2 inches like we did the first time around. And our squat in the front is still 6.5. So just looking at the truck, she looks a lot better. She's not lopsided. You know, it's not pulling up in the front. You can tell that the rear end is still higher than the front end. And that is those airbags being nice and compressed in there. Let me get underneath here real quick and show you what that looks like. So you can see them through here. There they are. So you can see they're compressed. They're squeezing out into those springs, but that's what they're supposed to do. They compress down and they hold the weight of the trailer. They don't let those things bottom out. Just like that, folks. That's it. The bags are in. They work. We only lost a half an inch when we put the travel trailer on, as opposed to 2 inches, which is a significant difference. It didn't raise the front end of the truck up, so we are safe to tow. The last check I have is I'm going to leave them inflated overnight, and I'll check them in the morning just to make sure they don't lose any air pressure overnight. And then you definitely want to check them periodically while you are towing. You don't want to leave them fully inflated while you're going around town, because it's going to adjust your headlights and make them point too far down. So you'd never want to have them fully deflated either. So I always leave about 5 PSI worth of air in there, just so they're not getting crumpled up, and that the atmospheric conditions won't compress them or squeeze them or do anything. It'll save wear and tear. So tomorrow morning I'll check them to make sure they're still holding air, but as of right now, they're doing great, folks. If you have any questions or comments or anything, definitely feel free to drop me something in the comments below. In the description of the video, I will leave a link to these particular airbags on Amazon. And if you have any questions about them, don't hesitate to reach out to me, folks. So it's getting late. It's about to storm, so I'm going to call it. Thanks for watching.